Hello and welcome to Thinking Aloud from WPNC and Go Donate, the podcast where we get together and share our thoughts about fundraising, advertising, and more. We're here to help charities find new donors, keep existing ones, and make the donation process easier than ever. If you like what you hear, we'd love to chat. All our details are in the bio.
Hello, I'm John Eversley. I'm MD here at WPNC. Today we're going to be talking purely about direct mail and direct mail in 2024. What does it mean for advertisers? And I think who best to have my first chat with than John Watson. John, he's a distinguished writer, that's his trade, and with a real passion for fundraising. So welcome, John. And I've got several big questions, topics for you to have a think about. The first big question is direct mail versus digital. People have been maybe not talking about or deploying direct mail as much as they used to. What are your feelings about that? Where do you see direct mail sitting alongside digital and other channels in the current climate?
Yeah, thanks, John. That's a good question to start with. Over the last few years, particularly, Royal Mail have just increased their postage prices, which strikes some of us as being rather odd because as they put the prices up and they shrink the market, they then have to put the prices up again because they've just shrunk the market, and then they have to put the prices up again because they've just shrunk the market. So it's a very strange way for a media owner to behave. Most media owners, if the numbers of eyeballs they're reaching decline, they do tend to reduce the price. But anyway, that's an issue we face. We've had a lot of the data protection issues over the past few years, which has made life more interesting for direct mailers. And as you said, John, the rise of digital, which is fast, it's cheap, and it was working really quite well at one point. I think the world has changed. Digital has now gone beyond saturation point, and people's junk folders are just filling up with all sorts of things. Social media, again, has its issues. What digital is very good at doing is addressing small target audiences very cheaply, and you can do a lot of testing. And that's a good thing for digital. What it's not so good for, and I think most charities would bear this out, is the quality of the responder that you get via digital is simply not as good as the quality of the responder you get via direct mail. And that's direct mail's big plus point. The quality of the reply, and by quality, I mean the amount of money that those people will give and the fact that they'll go on to give again is usually 10 times what you see in most other media. Obviously, the problem is with the cost of direct mail, it's more and more difficult to test it. But for those who do test it, then they find that it does actually work quite well. Works extremely well for our donor files, of course. And that's where an awful lot of direct mail is still going. But increasingly on the acquisition side, it works too. Royal Mail did introduce partially addressed mail, which is sent to the householder. And that makes it a lot cheaper and also avoids a lot of data protection issues. And if you get that right, that can work as well. So direct mail, I think, if it's not necessarily staging a huge comeback, it's holding its own. And I think over the next few years, as the quality issue becomes more and more apparent with the use of digital, I think you're going to see direct mail becoming one of the main recruitment channels, as well as going back to existing donors as well.
Yeah, interesting. So just a couple of stats to throw at you, because I know there'll be some people who will be looking at this and thinking, well, since COVID, I've seen much more digital activity. In fact, for those who are responsible for strategic planning of their campaigns, they're deploying much more or spending much more certainly in digital. So for in fact, a couple of stats here, digital's been growing about 11% per annum. It's now about 28 billion in the UK. That's what the media spend has been reported by AA and WAR, which is over 70% of total expenditure. So that's huge. On the other hand, direct mail is decreased by a fair amount. So how would you persuade people to come back to direct mail, particularly post-COVID, where people are thinking that there's been a permanent shift towards digital? How would you get them to re-engage with the channel of direct mail?
Yeah, we all know what's happened, but I think the argument for going into direct mail is that, as I said earlier, the quality of the people, of the responders that you get is going to be a lot better. And therefore, you just want cheap and cheerful, and you just want people giving you a few quid and thank you very much, then digital is a great source. Going into direct mail, you do get better data selection. More importantly, you get more space and more time to tell the story. And you've got a lot more, as they call it, dwell time. Direct mail sits in people's houses for days. And it's not repetitive. You're not watching it on your phone and 3 other things come in at the same time. It sits there on its own and is able to tell a story in the way that no others can. And that means, therefore, that the sort of people that you get are much more committed to your cause. They're not so much of the casual donors as the people who really have engaged with the cause that you're talking about. And that's why they then go on to form a much more solid bedrock of donors going forward into the future. It's an expensive test. Yes, absolutely. It's not cheap to do it, particularly with postage going up. Partially addressed mail, as I said, is a good way of doing it. You can certainly take the creative testing that you've used on digital in terms of what are the propositions that you've used that have worked best in digital, and then use that in direct mail. And that's a perfectly reasonable way of going forward. But if what you want is a donor file of committed people who are going to give you money in the future, and at the end of that process, hopefully leave you a legacy, direct mail is going to be the way in which you're really going to start to make inroads into that market.
The thought coming around my mind is, how do we persuade people of the value of direct mail, particularly in the charity sector, where ROI is absolutely critical?
Yeah. And I think it's down to this quality issue. Coming back to the cost point, John, the thing that drives me particularly mad is that one of the ways in which you can keep the cost down is to standardize the mail pack and the mailing houses. And, nothing but praise for mailing houses, so I'm not having to go at them. But quite clearly, if you can bulk buy vast numbers of C5 window envelopes, which they do, and bulk buy A4 sheets of paper, in other words, if you can buy standardized mailing packs, then the production cost goes down. Now, the problem with that is all charity mailings are ending up looking the same. They're all coming in window C5 envelopes with a bit of color on the front. And that, nothing wrong with it, but it's ignoring the fact that you can have a lot more impact if you make a different looking mail pack. I'm a great fan of DLs using manila. I know it's old fashioned, but bear in mind that your typical direct mail recipient tends to be in the older side of things. Different sizes of envelopes, custom made envelopes. Yes, they are more expensive, but if you want to get some creative cut through, then non-standardized direct mail is in my view, a good place to start. Risky to test, of course it is. I'm not saying it's not, but I think in most cases, the ROI that you would achieve as a result of doing these things is probably going to be better than you would expect. But not the ROI on day one, the ROI over a period of time, bearing in mind that these quality of these donors is going to be much higher.
Having got you on the subject of ROI, let's take you to a place that I think you're much more comfortable, which is the creative. So what would be your top 3 tips, should we say?
Yeah, okay. So the first one is focus on the people who are most likely to respond. And this is a big difference between direct mail and more general advertising. The role of general advertising is to influence as many people as possible to make them favorable towards your product or your cause. So your creative message is designed to get the most people that you can to engage with you. Direct mail is fundamentally different. And I'm not sure many people really understand this. I know you're writing to 100 people, but the vast majority of those people are simply not interested in your cause. And there's no point in even talking to them because they might read it, but they're not going to engage. So if you focus on the smaller number, now bear in mind the response rate to even a good direct mail pack, is in single figures, 2 or 3%, in most cases would be very good. So if you focus on those people and you address them, talk to them about the issues that that they're interested in because they're the people who are going to respond, you'll get a remarkable uplift in the results. You really will. So it's a different way of looking at direct mail. It's not talking about the cause. It's not talking about all the work you do, trying to influence people, trying to get them to engage with you. That's the job of other media. Direct mail's job is simply to say, what we do, here's how you can help us. Second tip, in direct mail, you've got the room to tell the story. And you really don't, in a 60-second TV commercial, you can show some of the story. In a social media post, you can't tell much story at all. Even in an email, you're struggling. In a direct mail pack, you've got as much as you want. You can have very, very long copy. And people that have heard me in the past will know I go on about this. But the truth is, because direct mail sits there and people actually like opening it and reading it, tell them what you can. Tell them everything. Tell them about the work you do. Tell them about all the things that are happening, focusing all the time on the people who are most interested. Again, if they're not interested in you, they ain't going to bother reading any of it anyway, so it doesn't matter. But if you are particularly interested in the cause, let's say it's cats protection, for example, talk about what you do, talk about how it started, talk about the cats. There's an awful lot in there, and people will love to hear the story because they're interested in it. And that means that direct mail gives you this almost unique ability to get a lot more dwell time, which again comes back to the point I was making earlier about the fact that the quality of the responder is better. Third point I would say is direct mail is tangible. You can actually feel it. Somebody brings you a direct mail pack and sticks it through your letterbox and you pick it up and you feel it and you open it. Now, no other medium has got tangibility, nothing. It lasts for a long time. And that means you can use all sorts of interesting techniques. The most basic technique is to create a response form, a device that's more of a voucher or more of a certificate or anything like that that makes it feel different just to a normal letter. I'm a great fan of putting the response form at the very top of something, going back to my original point about talking only to the people who are most interested. But you can go much further than that. There are some very good outfits in the States that produce the sorts of mailings that I think a lot of people in this country would find quite hard by contract work. They're putting things like umbrellas and tote bags inside envelopes and sending them to people. One or two charities in the UK have tried it. Royal British Legion did a lovely mailing where they actually had a poppy cross inside the envelope. You could actually feel it and see it. And so that tangibility factor is something that you can, in its simplest form, you can use the paper to create the message in its most maximum form. You can actually stick things in the envelope that you couldn't do otherwise. And that's coming back to the fact also, I think, that because of the tangibility, too much direct mail to me looks too expensive. It's got glossy color brochures. It's got all sorts of things going on in it. And Harold Sumption, one of the founders of UK direct marketing, always used to say that your appeals should look as though they've been put together late at night by two old ladies on a kitchen table. Okay, a slightly extreme way of saying it, but I wonder sometimes whether direct mail shouldn't look a lot simpler and a lot cheaper. And actually, it would be a lot cheaper, by the way. Think about the paper that you're printing on. You're a charity. You need the money. But they're the sorts of issues I think you should take into account.
And on that last point, we also get into the world of eco-friendly print and paper. So I think some of that cheaper looking pack probably come as a result of our much more environmentally aware policies when it comes to print and production.
That's absolutely right.
So I'm wondering now, John, what inspires you when and I'm sure that's what a lot of people would want to hear. So in producing your mail pack, what is it about the brief that you absolutely categorically cannot do without? What compels you? What inspires you? And also, what do you not want to hear?
Well, what I don't want to hear is things like the brand people insist that it looks like this and says this and does all these other. Yeah, great. But there's so many cases where the brand people put so many constraints around the direct mail working that it's not surprising sometimes that it doesn't work. What I want to do, anytime I get a brief, my instant reaction is to say, I want to go and talk to these people. I want to see what they actually do for myself. I really want to see it. However good a copywriter you may be, experiencing firsthand the work of the organization absolutely has a tremendous impact on what you do. Can I tell you two stories? Have we got the time?
Yeah, we have time.
The story goes right back to the very beginning of when I started the original WWAV many years ago. NSPCC called us and said, would you like to do a mail pack? Yes, of course. And I said, but I want to know more about what you do. So they said, okay, we'll set up this it's quite an emotional story, so forgive me. And so they said, yeah, well, if you go up to, we've got a centre in Nottingham where, we can show you that. Obviously you can't talk about real cases and all the rest of it, but just to give you a flavour of what the NSPCC does. So I got on a train, a callow young copywriter, full of advertising thoughts in my head, went up to the NSPCC, went to the centre in Nottingham, met this charming man who was in charge of the whole thing, and nodded wisely about the fact that they do this for children and social services. And writing notes and trying to look terribly, terribly interested in the whole thing. And he then went very quiet and he said, but what I want to show you is what really happens. And he opened a drawer in his desk and pulled out an envelope. This is a true story. And he said, look inside. And you can imagine the pictures he was showing me. I mean, they were burned in my memory even to this day. And it does make me quite emotional. And ever since that point, I have been determined to make the direct mail tell that story, because it's important, it's vital that the work of the NSPCC and indeed other charities gets across to people. That really motivated me. Another good story was Salvation Army. I was about to go on holiday, and the client said, "Can you do this mailing for us?" I said, "Yeah, okay, but I'm off on holiday, next week. Can I just skate down to one of your centres?" I went down to Westminster. They have a, believe it or not, in the middle of Westminster, there's a Salvation Army homeless centre still there. And again, I walked into this place and was met by one of the Salvation Army officers. She showed me around. I met the people, and by this time I was getting really quite anxious because I was trying to get away. And again, another of those little things happened where all of a sudden 2 coppers walked in, big blokes, heavy boots, uniforms, a lot, and came up to her and said, "Oh, we've had reports that your homeless people are making a nuisance of themselves outside, and can you do something about it?" And she looked at them very calmly and said, "Why not just come into my office?" And I watched as she led these 2 huge coppers into the office, and it was very quiet, and I waited for about 10 minutes. And then they walked out, and they wouldn't say a word to anybody. They were absolutely ashamed. And to this day, I don't know what she said, but it was very, very powerful. And again, that's the power of actually visiting these sites. One of my favorite mailings, by the way, was the mailing I wrote following that visit to Salvation Army. It was very first person. It was literally from me. And it said, "This is a true story." And I told that story in a direct mail pack. Worked extremely well.
Also reminds me, for another charity, you and I both went on a scouting visit down to Swindon, and you were engaging with some of the people who run the centre. And we were both talking to some of the people who were being helped through the centre. And what was really interesting was seeing how much they are happy to open up and share their experiences, talk about what they've gone through. That was all brilliant. But then to see that turn into the long copy, the story, the narrative, into a really compelling ask, really interesting.
You've got to have the reality. You can't make this up. You really can't. I see too many commercials these days which are clearly acted. And I just think it simply doesn't resonate. I mean, our colleague Maria, she's more often than not, she's flying off to far-flung parts of the world to film villages, to film disasters, to do all sorts of things, and comes back with the footage, the real footage, not sort of, made up stuff.
Yeah.
I think it makes me quite angry when I see this made up stuff, because it's people aren't starved. They want the real story. They want to know what's really going on. Tell the real stories.
Yeah.
They haven't said.
Yeah. Authenticity. That's the watchword these days.
Absolutely.
Before we run out of time, I'm going to put you on the spot with this one. Which mailing would you say, because we are talking about direct mail rather than all the other pieces of activity that you've been involved in, but which mailing would you say is the one that made you most proud?
I think it's that Salvation Army one I was telling you about.
Yeah. Okay.
There's written in 24 hours as a result of this visit to the homeless centre in Westminster.
Yeah.
And I wrote it, and I think it went through the client virtually verbatim. And it's a big thank you to Julius Ward Bingham at Salvation Army, who decided to go with it. And making it first person was fairly interesting as well. But I'm very proud of it. The reason why it's simple, it doesn't rely on images, it doesn't rely on anything other than the story, the real story that I experienced and managed to get down on a sheet of paper. And sometimes creatives say, "Oh, I need 3 weeks to do this." And yeah, but sometimes write what's in your heart very quickly, and the power of what you've written can really come across.
I'm particularly proud of that pack as well, because I do know that it was a control pack for many years.
Yeah.
Talking of years, just before we finish, the future. So we've talked about mailings today. We've had some reflection of things that have gone on in the past. Where do you see direct mail in the future? What role do you think it might play? Hopefully it plays a significant role, but what do you think?
For me, the big issue is getting more people onto donor files. And the trouble with the move to digital is while it recruits people, they're short term. And most charities will increasingly rely on having a powerful donor file that they can, first of all, keep getting appeals going to. But of course, the whole legacy side, which is becoming increasingly important. And that's as a result over the years of the rise in house prices, which means that the future revenue of charities is going to become increasingly dependent on that supporter base. And I think there is no way that I know of communicating with that supporter base or getting the right people into that supporter base other than by direct mail. Printing technology makes so many other things more practical and possible. You can now get mailings out in 24 hours. So it's virtually on the digital side, but not quite. There's a lot more that can be done. And I think that's where we need to move.
Thank you very much, John. That was very interesting. So thank you for sharing your experience and insights. If you've enjoyed this, you'll be able to join us again very soon. Thank you very much and goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks so much for listening. We hope you found that useful. To hear upcoming Thinking Aloud podcasts, subscribe now. And if you think we could help you, get in touch. Our details are in the bio.